Hello, Orators! Today we have a very special guest amongst us. We have Abhiir Bhalla for the very first episode of Orators. Well, talking about our very first guest, he is not just an environmentalist, but a person who is an inspiration for all of us. He is an eco hero recognized by the BBC World News as one of the coolest youth environmentalists in 2020. He's been working in the field of environment for over a decade now, tackling challenges like climate change, air pollution, waste management. But here's the really cool part about it. He's not just about talks, he's about actions. Abhiir runs a podcast about climate change, showing us how to make a difference. Plus, he's a three-time TEDx speaker, and he's got his sights set on being future Prime Minister. Well, I'm not sure about that, but we'll look into that in the conversation. But for now, he's shaking things up in one of the big four consultancy agencies, all while inspiring young folks like all of us and to join us in the climate movement that he pursues passionately. Stick around, and it's going to be a blast for all of us.
Let's go. So, Abhiir, before the environmental crusader we know today, there was a young teenager. And we have seen that environmental activists, say John Muir or like Wangari Maathai, or like many of them, like had undergone like a profound personal experience that brought them into the field of environmentalism and politics. Can you share a moment or a period in your life when your perspective on environmental issues changed drastically, and basically how it all started?
Perfect, thank you. So, firstly, I'm very impressed that you mentioned indigenous environmentalists because typically we just hear of Greta Thunberg and Al Gore and the likes. So, I'm glad you did your research. I think I definitely did have a turning point for me in my case as well, because back when I was in class 5 or 6, maybe, there were several factors which came together, but a key one, the first one that I would want to talk about is um, it was air pollution. And, I was very indifferent, at best, very indifferent, at worst, probably even a climate denier back in class 6. I was like Donald Trump Jr., perhaps. And yeah, but of course, I was not as aware, and I was just in class 6, I was 11 or 12. And at that time, I thought that this is not my problem to work on. Around that time, I used to be the teacher's pet in school, and I would, all the teachers would love me, and I would make them love me even when they didn't. But that's relevant because I was in all my classes except this one workshop we used to have every 2-3 weeks, which was like a seminar on climate change that would happen once a month or twice a month. And one day my teacher caught me bunking that class, and because I was in her good books, she didn't punish me and she just sent me back in. And that day we were talking about air pollution. And around that similar time, my doctor had told me that I was having seasonal allergies, which I later came to know as seasonal asthma or bronchitis, um, which was because of Delhi's air quality. So it was when I realized that how polluted the air was, that's when I decided that I wanted to work on air pollution. And so between the workshop, actually listening to it for the first time, between this doctor's message to me that it's the air quality and you have to take XYZ medicines, or this is something that you might want to get used to because it'll happen every maybe twice a year or so. Um, all of that, and to top it all, I think I had a significant push even from home at that time, as all of us are over students at one point. We've all had our families encouraging us, oh, do something meaningful, join a club or join a society, especially in school, right? In college you become more independent, but in school, my maternal grandmother, my mom were like, oh, join some club, do something meaningful. So I think these three things came together: the doctor's message, the familial push, and this workshop that I sat in. And that's when I realized, purely for selfish reasons, and I'd want to elaborate on that later, but it was purely for selfish reasons that I realized that I went from not caring about climate change to actually not just learning about it, but also starting to work on it. So that was the sort of wake up point, for lack of a better word. Yeah.
I think now it's I like I research. I think it's about 11 years of this journey from starting in sixth grade to now. And I just wanted to ask that you talked about how you were pushed by your parents, and I think in some way or the other, as youth, we are promoted by our parents and our family members to go for it. But when you come in college, like you said, there's independence that comes with it. So, as a college student, how did you utilize your Ashoka journey to the best of your ability? And what would you recommend to us as just Ashoka students to make the most of it? And how can we really bring this journey as a meaningful journey out of it?
To your larger question about what kept me going, and when you're more independent in college, how do you do it? See, even in school, it's not like anyone was forcing me. And till date, everything that I've done, I'm very proud to say I did it on my own, not like through a friend of a parents, or not that kind of stuff,
Favor
right?
work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So everything that I've done, my work has been built on myself, by myself. But the larger point thereby is that even in college, it was just about shifting priorities, right? There was this meme on Instagram that if you're good at studies, if you have a social life, and if you want to sort of no and sleep, the intersection is sleep, because that's what you have to sacrifice on. And as Ashokans, we know how little we sleep as it is.
Yeah.
But it was amplified even more, right? So my roommate was sleeping at 2, I was sleeping at 3:34 because I was out sending emails or like drafting social media posts or making presentations for events like the one today. Right? So, and that continues even now as I've, become a professional. I still, because I'm balancing competing interests between my day job and continuing the work that I do.
Yeah.
And obviously I can't do that on office time. So,
Absolutely.
so yeah, in short, the idea is that it's about staying committed, it's about being passionate, and it's about truly believing in the work that you're doing, right? Something that I'm going on a tangent here, but something that I'd like to say is that I've seen this firsthand. There are so many people our age who
Yeah.
start these social and environmental campaigns in school, in college,
Just for college
uh,
application.
just for their CVs. And there's two things. One is that in the interim, I'm happy because काम तो हो रहा है.
Yeah.
At least someone is benefiting from it, even if you're being selfish, right? But in the long term, the idea is that at the very least, be sensitive enough to hand it down, right? Because even your juniors in school and college want to pad up their CV. So if you are being shameless and if you are exploiting a social cause, at least be sensitive enough to hand it down, right? And I say that with all the realism there is, because
yeah.
I can sit here and preach that don't do social initiatives for just 2 years, do something meaningful, do something for many years. But एक कान से गया दूसरे से निकल
निकला,
गया.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
the realistic thing is, even the 2 years that you're working, let it be impactful, let
Yeah.
it be meaningful, and then hand it down, right? Don't just, I mean, if you're working in the village community, imagine 2 years you've gotten to Yale, Harvard, NUS, whatever, and then suddenly you stop coming. What will
Yeah.
they think?
Yeah,
That
Right?
just
So
impacts.
so it's important to hand it down.
But
Yeah.
you beautifully used the word balance, and as a Shoka student, how did you find that balance?
I didn't. That's the answer. You probably can't see, but I have a lot less hair and a lot more white hair that I had back in my first year. That came at the sacrifice, at the cost of sleep. Also, sometimes anxiety. Sitting in the shuttle at like 11 o'clock at night, or for that matter, even reaching Jahangir Puri from an event which I'm leaving CP at 10:15 and calling up the bhaiya frantically that last shuttle hai, please.
Brooklyn.
And then there have been times where I've come straight from the railway station or the airport at like 1:30 and I'm begging them like, oh, I was speaking at a UN event. I'll convince the dean, please let me in. I've come from Bihar, I've come from Lucknow, please let me go. And where will I mean, of course, I
Yeah.
had a house in Delhi where I could go back very easily, but whatever, I wanted to be on
Absolutely.
campus for the next morning, right? So it was not easy, and very honestly, I'm not going to give a preachy answer and say there was a balance. At best, there was some sort of semblance of organization, right? And I would make tens of lists, which would also induce further stress. Ki ye karna, ye karna, I have to check this. But it got the work done, right?
Valid.
So if you're doing classes, if you're doing your I don't call this extracurriculars, but whatever you're passionate about, and you're socializing, and you're partying, and you're sleeping, you have to compromise somewhere, right? All this preachy stuff we read on Instagram about, this could get me into trouble, but the stuff we read about prioritize your mental health and be 8 hours of sleep, do yoga, वो सब अच्छा है, बहुत important है, कर सकते हो तो बहुत बढ़िया, लेकिन हर बारी वो नहीं हो सकता. That's the reality.
Yeah,
So,
makes
yeah.
sense. So you talked about the whole environmental thing and your passion. So but you also need something to fuel your passion, because like after a certain age, you become independent of your own life, and earning some livelihood, that also becomes a key aspect, because you can't be like, oh, I want to work for environmental and all of those different aspects, and you don't have a couple of bucks in your bank account. You're not gonna. That's like unrealistic.
Yeah.
So like a big part of getting a job or these internships at let's say college or high school starts with having a good LinkedIn profile. And when I saw your LinkedIn profile, it was like completely optimized towards your field. So like can you share some practical tips that anyone, especially let's say young professionals or like
Yeah.
college students, can implement right now, like in the next
Yeah.
5 or 6 minutes of
For
their
sure.
listening, to optimize the LinkedIn profiles? No BS, only the practical stuff that
I
worked
never
for you.
give BS. I will give you 5-6 pointers, but before that, I want to go back to your earlier point about me working with a consulting firm. I didn't address that, I just remembered. But that's exactly what speaks towards your earlier point that you need to monetize it, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I was just talking about this with Professor Priyank right now. You can create your personal brand, but at the end of the day, you need to put bread on the table.
Yeah.
And the 1 or 2 years of skepticism that I mentioned back at home, that turning point, also came from this, right? That you're investing so much time, and sure,
End product क्या होगा?
maybe you can come on TV, maybe you can get a blue tick on Insta, but इससे पैसे कहाँ से मिल रहे हैं, right? मैं अब कोई इन्फ्लुएंसर तो हूँ नहीं जो बैठ के दिन के 4 रील बना रहा है और वेलापंती कर रहा है स्टोरीज के सामने. Not to diminish what influencers do, but yeah. So that was not politically correct. Anyway, anyway, so yeah, I know so many influencers in Ashoka who are gonna kill me for that. But no, what I was saying, the essence of what I'm trying to say is that yes, you have to put bread on the table, and for me, there were 2 routes, right? And I'm gonna talk about that later today also. But one is you have to build your personal brand to that level where not only are you doing samaj seva, but you are also, through that personal brand building, you're also getting you're also getting invited as a thought leader, right?
Absolutely.
So maybe I've been lucky that after 5 years or 6 years or 7 years in this field, I've been lucky that after maybe 3 or 4 out of my 10 invites are completely paid, right? Whether it's getting a fee for my, especially the conference type of stuff, because that's important, right? You need to be compensated for your time if you're preparing a presentation or you're flying all the way somewhere.
Absolutely.
So either conferences. Recently, it's been in the form of 2 ads that I did.
Oh, wow.
I did an ad for JK Paper and how they're using social farm forestry to actually save trees while also manufacturing paper.
Wow.
Similarly, I did an ad for Hero Electric's electric bike.
Electric bikes.
So it's all there. You just have to, जैसे बोलते हैं, डटे रहो और हो जाएगा. coming to your question about LinkedIn, because I think you want practical outputs from this conversation.
Absolutely.
Also, so that you can then make shorter clippings for Insta, I figure.
Yeah.
But see, I told you, I say it as it is. No BS.
Yeah.
But yes,
Yeah.
5-6 things for LinkedIn, right? Sort out your headline would be number one.
Yeah.
I've put not just what I do, like so I think 3 positions, if I'm not wrong, talk about the positions I occupy, that I work with 1 2 3 nonprofits, XYZ corporate. Talk a little bit about your education if you don't have a lot to fill up, or if it's a legacy brand. Ashoka's getting there, so um, and so that's the headline. Profile picture obviously should be something
Very
very
important.
Professional.
very professional. A lot of people tend to put their cover photo as brands they worked with or interned with. I chose to do it with a big turning point for me, which was my first ever BBC interview, and that too with the UN SecGen. So for me, that was a defining moment, and it's
Absolutely.
also very, very. क्या
Influential.
कहते हैं? No, it captures people's attention, right? So
Captivity.
that's there in the cover photo. I've listed everything in my experience. There is a case to be made both for and against it, but I've listed everything from class representative to form
Yeah, it's very
representative.
in-depth.
And I've explained what I did, what I learned, what my skill
Yeah.
sets were. That's what becomes important, right? You can have the fanciest brands out there, but unless you're telling people who are
What you
looking at
learned
your
from it.
LinkedIn what your takeaway, what your skills were, then then you're as good as just a brand cut
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
Cover.
thappa, yeah.
Absolutely.
Fourth thing that I would say is LinkedIn. I don't know. I think comes after you have 5,000-6,000 followers, but once you do, you have this option to add a field called talks about or
Yeah,
works
talks.
on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
So
available.
in my case, it talks about air pollution, sustainability, climate action, youth empowerment, youth leadership. Those are my 5,
Yeah.
right? Again, very optimized. And remember that through all of this, there's very little focus on my consulting side.
Yeah.
But that's balanced because as it is, even before I took on this full-time role, I was working as a sustainability freelancer / consultant. So that's accounted for. And partially because between us and between Ashokans, I don't see myself being in this role for maybe more than 2-3 years at most, because masters, etc. Right?
Absolutely.
So my idea still is to work in and for the brand, promote the brand, but also continue to do what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
I think you covered Secretary General of UN as something that was very big for you, and something that's very personal to me as well is that, contrary to the societal notions that youth do not have the power to change policies and change problems in in the world, I would love to know how youth can get into the field of change making. And since you are an inspiration for so many people who are in this field of bringing change, what would you say? What are the optimizing key factors that one can pursue to make a career in that and get into the levels with your passion in place?
See, complicated question. But the way I see it is that it's about. Sorry, can you come at that question again?
How
Yeah.
can youth make difference and
Okay,
impact?
yeah. So, how can you? It's yeah. The reason I got a little overwhelmed by that question is because I give a 1-hour talk on the role of youth in climate action, right? So I don't know how I can possibly do justice to that answer here.
Yeah.
But what I will say again starts with what I said earlier in terms of being passionate and committed. But secondly, and more importantly, again, it's a lot about it has to be meaningful yet visible, which is very important,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Because we have one strata of society who are doing plantation drives for the photo op, the other strata of society who are just doing so many things out there in villages in the back of beyonds and getting no recognition for their work. What
Absolutely.
I have tried to do and what I
ground.
try to encourage people to do is to strike that middle ground, right?
Yeah.
Do meaningful work, don't do a stupid photo op, and yet ensure
change.
that you're recognized for it, because at the end of the day, working on the climate or social causes at large is a very thankless job, right? Your everything is personal sacrifice.
Yeah.
Even now, after 11 years in, I'm not paid for a lot of the engagements that I do. And it's funny because those same companies talk about how they believe in paying interns and how they believe in the importance of man hours converting to financial output.
Yeah.
But and that's a challenge of being a young person, right? That unless you're
You're
a
not taken
white-haired person
seriously.
with a PhD, or unless you're someone with a really big brand, they don't want to pay you because they think you're just come and talking.
Yeah,
It's the
absolutely.
effort put behind preparing a presentation, or actually just planning that in and taking the time out from your day job, or the rest of that is not accounted for. um, so I really don't have a short answer to how young people can become change makers. What I would say again is to find that niche, right? Something that we were taught at Ashoka, at least the social sciences side of it, is find that needle in the haystack, right?
Yeah.
Find that missing piece in the puzzle. um,
Yeah.
and that's what it is about, right? Don't
Yeah.
go to the same retirement home, don't go to the same village and plant 5 more trees. Go to the back of the beyonds, go to the islands which are being flooded, go to the riverside cities which are possibly going to be broken down to build a dam. Go to the tribal communities who are not getting heard, who actually have been working on the climate since the past 300 years, and their practices are
Yeah.
some of the best practices.
Sustainable practices.
And why look far? I mean, we again, I'm going on a tangent, but I have so many Ashokans who've asked me, oh, bamboo toothbrush is such an insta gimmick, it's such a scam, it's a money making gimmick.
Yeah.
Arey bhai, why should sustainability not be a money making gimmick? The world
Absolutely.
goes round on a profit motive.
makes
Climate and sustainability needs to be a profit making endeavor. And if you're so chindi and if you don't want to buy a bamboo toothbrush, go use a neem stick.
Absolutely.
Go old school,
Yeah.
right? There's a solution for everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's doing that jugaad, just like how you've pinned this camera up here. It's about finding that jugaad. It's about just making it work.
Yeah. Just one thing. One word to describe the time you met Secretary General UN.
Shocked, because I didn't know until 6 hours before.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Okay, so I really like the point of like why not make sustainability profitable as well? Because like, see, the thing is with technology, let's say we have normal toothbrush and then we have like an electrical toothbrush.
Yeah.
Technology comes with it, price increases. So why not move it to like the sustainability factor with it? I really loved your point.
Yeah.
So moving on to the final aspect of the episode, it would be, so I recently loved so your Instagram caption. I went through your profile when you met Mr. Gandhi. Context.
Aw.
That was not recent, I have to say. That's
That's the first
6-7
post.
years
It's
ago,
the
yeah.
first post that you posted
Yeah,
on
yeah, yeah.
Instagram.
So
The others have been archived because I looked horrible. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
the interesting part is, see, often in the media, Rahul is sort of like portrayed through a polarized lens of media and like social media. He would say something and they'll clip that thing and post it as if he's a stupid guy. What was it like meeting him unfiltered?
It's been a long time, and I'm not close friends at all, but I'm acquaintances of Priyanka Gandhi's kids because they were in school, and I've done a couple of MUNs, etc. with them. No, the reason I mention that is because I don't want my political views to come through on this particular forum, though I'm happy to talk about that for hours at end. What I will say is, see, in short, what it was like to meet him, even back then, this was 7-8 years ago, 6-7 years ago, he was charming, very suave, knew his stuff. That being said, there was something to be said about the fact that 5 years ago he would say, some weird things and rightly be made fun of it. Yet, my problem is, in the popular imagination of a lot of people, that image of Pappu has not changed until now, even though he has done a lot in the last 2-3 years to change that image. And though I don't have a photo, I met him recently about a year and a half ago. And, I mean, in fact, what I would want to talk about is the caption of that photo more than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Context,
yeah.
it says, like for our podcaster, for our listeners, and that would be, it says, meeting the future Prime Minister of India.
No, yeah, the exact
Something
caption
similar.
is Mr. Gandhi had the privilege of meeting the future Prime Minister of India, instead of something to the opposite end. But no, what I'm trying to say is, see, brilliant guy, needs to get his messaging together. I can talk about politics for hours. I want to talk more about your question about this caption, as to why I was saying he met the future Prime Minister rather than me meeting
And
a
one
senior
thing,
leader.
do you plan to get into politics by any chance?
Yes, I do. So I will send this photo to you guys if I think you'll find it very interesting. In my school, in my report cards, we used to have something called a My Page.
Yeah.
And in the My Page, we used to be allowed to doodle, scribble, do whatever we wanted before our grades were put up, so that we could appease our parents in
That
case
is
our
so
grades
our
were bad.
school vibe.
And
So
this
for
is from
context-
class 1.
Okay, so the thing which is written is, I wish to be a
Prime Minister in
Prime
horrible
Minister
English, yeah.
because I love the because.
Yeah.
Because the Prime Minister leads
India and the
India
people.
and allows people.
Yeah.
Lovely.
I was 4 or 5 years old when this was written. Idea being that it's been a long-term
It's a
vision.
long
It's
vision.
festered and fostered, not festered, it's fostered since then. And it's still true. But after Ashoka, I've realized A, that political science doesn't prepare you for politics. B, no, I mean, I learned a lot from political science, but political science doesn't prepare you for politics. And B, I've had that dose of salt to realize now that you unless you come from an Ambani type of family or a Gandhi type of family, right? In
Yeah.
one case wealth, in the other case a political lineage, it's very tough to make it in politics. So I've become very cognizant and realistic about the fact that I could want to be the Prime Minister. That doesn't mean I'll become the Prime Minister. And to that end, I have decided that I would want to enter politics as a technocrat. It's important to have money to support myself and the family.
Yeah.
So I want to work for 5-10 years and then enter politics along the lines of some of the better and wiser ministers of the cabinet. Ashwini Vaishnav, Nitin Gadkari, Jay Shankar, all these guys are phenomenal at what they do. And they didn't start out as career politicians. They started out
Absolutely.
as experts in their field, CAs, lawyers,
Yeah.
civil servants. So that's the plan, but you never know. 20 years down the line, the planet may blow up. So
No.
let's see where that goes.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah,
So
fingers crossed.
yeah, that was the last question. Now we'll move to the most fun part of the episode,
Yeah. Yes.
which is rapid fire.
Okay.
Answer in as short as
Do I win a
possible.
hamper? At the end?
Unfortunately, you don't.
Okay.
But we'll
Karan
give you a
Johar
lot.
will be
But we'll give you a
disappointed.
latte choco pie.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So apparently, someone quoted a hopeless romantic in the world of fuckboys, or vice versa, on his or her Instagram page.
Yeah.
So,
Insta is definitely not it, but yes.
So have you found your love?
No, I'm not.
In search?
Yeah, very much. So.
Okay. So is your ice cream organic?
No. I mean, sometimes, not most of the time, not.
Wildest Thursday night story, as short as possible.
Ooh. I can't do it. I can't keep it short, but I'll tell you this. So we were in this room, and top floor, 10th floor. My friends were going wild. The windows were open. They were inhaling
Yeah.
all kinds of things, drinking all kinds of things, and I mean, and I was paranoid because it was 1:30 and my friends were refusing to turn down the music, and मेरी फटती है, ठीक है, like I love to party but मेरी फटती भी है. तो मैंने बोला कि चलो भाई आ जाएगा, reduce the volume, and we
quiet
had
hours.
these bright brothel kind of lights which were on, okay, and you can see them from the ground floor. Red, blue, green neon lights are flickering and music is playing, windows are open.
And the windows are open.
Yes,
Shit.
and
Okay.
this maybe even was just a Tuesday night. So we got a call from the neighbor ki bhai tone it down. That's when I said I'm out. But
Yeah.
I also have a lot of FOMO. So I was just standing in the corridor, and sure enough, I was so lucky. 2 minutes later, comes, sir comes, and comes, knocks on the door, and all my friends. I mean, I'm condensing the story. It's a half an hour story, but long story short, they tell him that we are playing Mafia, and they go down and they have to write what happened, and the says, please write whoever was in the room. So my friend who later became my roommate wrote, my name is X and the players were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And legendary story. I can't delve into further details, but
You
yeah.
shouldn't. You were playing Monopoly.
Yeah.
Okay, so worst romantic experience.
Oh, hooked up with the first year, and that did not end well, because I didn't realize first years are inexperienced.
Okay. Okay, moving on to the last
Yes.
rapid fire. So, what are your views on EVs or electric bikes per se? Because keeping in mind
Yeah.
the amount of emissions that they produce in keeping the batteries is equivalent to like driving them for the next 20 years.
इतने मसालेदार questions पूछ के वापस वहीं पे आ गए लेकिन
क्या कर सकते हैं?
no, so there are studies, I don't know about bikes, but there are studies which show that and more than the charging of batteries, because
Lithium.
yeah, the mining and the components of EVs are more damaging than the charging itself. And the reality is that whether it's bikes or cars, EVs ka electricity is still coming from coal-fired power plants. But in the next 3 years, that's going to change. Already, India's 40% renewables. It's a very lesser known fact. I mean, we have 40% capacity. We're not using all of it. So, long story short, there are enough scientific papers to show that the net offset of an EV is still better, even if it's coming from coal-fired fossil fuel power plants. For bikes, I honestly haven't read because
makes sense.
I don't know
Yeah.
about bikes.
Okay.
But I suppose that agar gaadi chal sakti hai, to bikes are smaller, so it should be applicable there also.
There also.
So, it was a pleasure having you, Abhiir.
Absolutely.
Thank
And
you.
we can't wait to see how
Don't
your
cancel
journey...
me after this episode.
Okay, we'll
no,
try
no.
not to.
Yeah.
But we can't wait to see how your journey unfolds in the future. And we just want to say we love you so much.
Thank you.
especially
Yeah.
of this conversation. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening into this episode of Buck Orators. See you soon. Bye bye. Cut.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was amazing.
Sorry?